of 15th and 16th century, which means from 1440 to 1511, we are talking about little less than 100 years to be talked in 45 minutes, quite something. Because we are talking about one of the most important period of Ahmedabad, because Ahmedabad was founded then, that was to talk about. So I'll try to be a little marathon, but that's all I have to do quickly. Now, the reason I put Ahmedabad is the way it should be spelled, because it's the city of Ahmed. That's why it's A-H-M-E-D-A-B and not A-H-M-E-D-A-B. So please, there's no mistake in writing the spelling of Ahmedabad. It should be Ahmedabad because it was founded by Ahmedabad. Now we know that Gujarat, before Ahmedabad was founded, India was predominantly Hindu region, Hindu architecture everywhere. One of the finest one is 11th century modern tank. And after that, around 12th century onwards, so many temples destroyed, and the temple spoilages were used to make mosques, which we all know about. So this is the one in Dwarka, and you can see that this is actually an entrance to a mosque and not a temple. It looks like a temple, but it is an entrance to a mosque in Dwarka. And this is an entrance to another mosque in Dwarka with all the decorations that you would have in the Hindu temple. A little Ganesh there at the thing, and then this little threshold which you have. So this is how they started making mosques from temple spoilers. And this is the back side of one of the mosques, and you can see that all the stones are different sizes, different shapes, different quality, and look at the top of the shikhar, which are the back side of the Qibla wall or mihrab, where you can see another decoration of the temple which is put into a mosque. So I start with Ahmedabad around 15th century, and I would like to read from a book which is one of the finest book I know, and anybody must know about Islamic architecture of this country. It's this book called Indo-Islamic Architecture by Zaid Desai. It's around 80-page book. It costs only 28 rupees 30 paisa. If you don't have 30 paisa, they don't give you 70 paisa back change. So it costs you 29 rupees. If you are a government employee, you get 50% discount. So it's 14 rupees 15 paisa. But it's the finest book that I know on Indian Islamic architecture of Ahmedabad, I mean the entire country. And I want to read just one first paragraph of provincial style, because it talks about provinces. Around 15th century, several provinces got developed throughout the country. Multan, which is in Pakistan, Bengal, Gujarat, Malwa, Jaunpur, Faruqi style, which is Khandesh, Deccan, several styles, Kashmir, Sindh, and so on. And what Dr. Desai writes is something very interesting, which I want to read from Gujarat, 14th to 16th centuries. Of all the provincial styles of Indo-Muslim architecture, that of Gujarat is the largest, the most important, and most elegant. So of all the styles that I talked about in Khandesh or Faruqi, which is in Khandesh, Malwa, Deccan, Jaunpur, Gujarat, Bengal, and other styles, Gujarat is the most elegant, most important, and the largest. So, and this was done by these four kings, out of which two very good and two not very important. So I start with one of the first ones called Ahmad Shah, who founded the city. We all know about it. And the first mosque that I will talk about is Habib Khan's mosque. And in fact, they had a huge, entire courtyard was a tanka, which is like they collect the water. But it was so well designed that for years I saw that they used to run a madrasa. And it was quite well ventilated because water below also had to be ventilated for the fresh system. Anyway, the mosque was done very hush-hush, very quickly. You can see very simple facade decoration. Marlons are quite kind of odd, but put together. But an interesting feature is at the back here. It's the only mosque that we have in entire Western India which has a bastion-like thing on a corner. This feature never is seen ever after that of 1450. So this is very interesting, and you can see the jalis which come from different parts of the temples which are put in at the back of the Qibla wall, the wall which faces Makkah, or we call it the one which is which has mihrab and minbar. So inside is also several temple columns are put together of different sizes and shapes and different decorations which are there. And the dome, which is quite interesting because the domes that were available from the Hindu temples were probably from this span to this span. What they did, because the spans were a little lesser, what they did, they added other rings which are simple all around the dome to make it bigger. So the first mosque Ahmad Shah is to make is a Jama Masjid, which means that every Muslim is supposed to pray 5 times a day, but every Friday most importantly. So he made Jama Masjid, which was later on converted to a royal mosque, for the Ahmad Shah, for the king. And this is the mosque that is also done. It's also quickly done, Hasha's job, which you can see with jalis. Some are not even put in, some jalis come from somewhere, some are just pasted. You can see that there's a little distance between the two. So they were, whatever sizes were there, they just put it together to make a mosque. It's the first mosque which is near. And inside the columns, you can see that several columns come from different parts of the temples nearby. And inside, there was so many times when I started doing the book in 87, 89, so many mosques were used for madrasa, people used to study inside, and this was the scene then, now it's all gone, and the spaces were quite well lit because they understood how to take the light and ventilation, which we'll talk about later. So, the mihrab inside, but just mark one thing, that inside the mihrab is just a little stone with a little lotus stone, not a decoration, just a painting kind of a thing, like an inlay of a stone. And the dome. So they also learned this kind of making rings to make the dome quickly and faster to make the structure. At the same time, you can see the rings which came from some other parts of the temple. They just added the rings to make the mosque main prayer hall quickly. The other mosques, they were still Ahmad Shah. At the time, they are trying to make a style of architecture, style for the region, style for the reign, and they make a mosque which is very, very simple. This is the earliest mosque around 1414, 1415, and you can see that they are still not grappling with the idea of structure or the system to kind of span, and you can see that there are 3 columns back to back. They are still not very clear, or perhaps how to make a span of the structure quickly and fast. And the first mosque that has to be done, that means for Ahmad Shah, is Jama Masjid. Now Ahmad Shah decides, one of the first things that he does is to make the foundation, makes the Badra fort, which is his, makes a path, which is processional path or ritual path, or whichever way, from Badra, between Darwaza, and all the way to Jama Masjid, King's tomb and King's tomb, his tomb and his queen's tombs next to each other. So the whole path that he designs, first thing that he have to do is Jama Masjid, because in order to convert as many Hindus, from Hindus to Muslims, or for those which are Muslims, he had to provide the biggest mosque, which is Jama Masjid. So Jama Masjid, when it was built, it was the biggest, one of the biggest mosques ever built in the country in that time. So you can see that it is quite large, very high plinth, with a central waju where the water is kept, and a prayer hall, very spacious. And this is also another feature that they put in a zanana. Or this was the feature, was later on totally discarded, was not there at all after some years, because either zanana or the ladies were not allowed to come to the mosque, or maybe sometimes this was used by the royal, or maybe the wazis and others. But this feature is not seen later part of the mosque too. So you can see that they try to work out the facade, which is quite interesting, with the lower, with higher, and then still higher portion in the center, taking the clerestory light all the way inside the western wall. Because you see, in every mosque, the mosque has to face Mecca. In India, it has to face western side. That means the light is quite less by the time afternoon. So in order to get the light, they created clerestory system by which they can raise the platform, raise the front, and get the light inside all the way. That's how it happens. If you go to this mosque, another mosque which has no clerestory light, you will see the difference. And this is what we do to students of architecture sometimes. They take more or less at the same time, 10 o'clock and 10:30 from Ahmad Shah's mosque to Jama Masjid and see the quality of life changing drastically just because of clear story introduction there. That's the courtyard. And I still remember around 80s, they had very huge, large things, which were quite old, which were all taken out. But what is interesting, sorry, this is circuit, is this structure which is around the Vajur. What the references say that this was the structure probably quite old as probably 200 years of wooden structure, which is done around the area where they could wash themselves to go before the prayer. So as I said, that Ahmad Shah's first project was to work out the entire city and plan a city. So first thing that he has to do is this between the royal enclosure, which is Badr Square, and the other enclosure, which is at the Jama Masjid and public, he puts the gate in the front, which is still the Rawda, symbolically and physically as well. So that's step one. And we also have photographs where they had taken a structure on the top here, which was probably wood and textiles. We also think that they must have used tremendous amount of textile during that time around 15th century and 16th century. We call it shamiana, which was they used. And this was basically for people to sit or maybe to play the music. This is the area we are talking about. But this is how the structure ended in the vast. Now, this is quite old photograph around 1989. Now, this is never seen like that. So, Ahmad Shah dies and comes on the throne his eldest son called Muhammad Shah, who rules for kind of 9 years. And very interesting story. It's just a typical Ekta Kapoor. And I thought, since I knew that there were not going to be lots of architects, so I thought I'd just make a little story. This is what kind of we have the references from maybe Ahmadi and other sources. That Ahmedabad king, Ahmad Shah, the first king, has a son called Muhammad Shah. On the other side, there was Jam of Singh in Pakistan, had 2 daughters. One called Bibi Mirki and another was called Bibi Mughlai. One was very beautiful and second was not so beautiful. She was, the not beautiful one was supposed to marry Muhammad Shah. This is how the story started. So, Muhammad Shah was supposed to marry the not so beautiful girl, a daughter of Jam of Singh. The other one, which is beautiful one, was supposed to marry Saint Shah Alam, son of Burauddin, one of the most important saints, the circuit that we talked about, on whose name the entire place started. But we also know that his father, on whose support and wishes and of course his auspicious kind of sayings and everything, that Ahmad Shah founded the city. So they say, was supposed to have tremendous knowledge of making prophecies, and he would say that what can happen, like a storyteller or astrologer. So his son was supposed to marry the beautiful daughter of Jam of Singh, and he was supposed to marry the not so beautiful daughter of Jam of Singh. And many came to know that actually the beautiful daughter is not his father. So he got very upset. And he, by force, partly by force and partly by money, sorry, the ladies, you can also buy the ladies, and he married the beautiful lady. And the other one, unfortunately, got married to the son of the saint. And he got very upset. He said, what is this, father? And then father made a prophecy, my son, it is destined that you shall marry both of them. Don't. It is destined that you shall marry not only one, but both. So the story goes a little further, that the king dies faster, just in 9 years. But this lady, Mughlai, bears a son. But there was also earlier ladies also who also had other children. And when he married her and got the son called Muhammad Begra, whom I come to later, and when the king died, she had to run away to take the support or take kind of what you call it, what is the word in English, to kind of be away from kings, take a shelter absolutely, to this place in Sarkis. She comes with her son, who is Muhammad Begra, supposed to be the king of Ahmedabad. she comes and stays with this person. At the same time, the lady, there are two sisters, so sisters help each other, and they both stay with the saint's son. Little later, the lady, the not so beautiful lady, she dies, and he marries her, because you can't have a lady staying in your house alone. So he marries both the daughters of Jamus. Anyway, the story goes a little further, because Ekta Kapoor has to have children after another. And this is how it goes. This is what I was, if you know, that the son of Muhammad Shah, called Qutbuddin Ahmad Shah, who comes on the throne, is very afraid, because his stepbrother, who was the son of this lady, the beautiful lady, is staying with the Sarkhet. So he sends his wife, Rani Rupamanjari, to go and get this son so that he can kill and rule Ahmedabad forever, because there is no competition. It's like what happens now, that everybody puts everyone's slave, people get killed. In Pakistan this happens even often. So at the same time again a prophecy happens that this king sends this lady to get this hand of the son, and the saint smiles and says, today Bibi, you take Fat Khan, the son of this lady, by the hand, but one day he shall take you by the hand too. And the prophecy proves true again, and he also dies very suddenly. That's when Fat Khan becomes the king, very young, and marries this lady who is the queen of the stepbrother. So that's how the story goes. So there were also lots of things happening in the time of Ahmedabad was founded, and we know that. And this is how the thing is, power always makes people corrupted, or power makes people go crazy. Let's come back to architecture. So that was a time, Ahmedabad, Gujarat was also trying to create a style of their own. Another important style was two. One is trabeated, which is with column and beam, and second is arcuated, which is domes and arches. And this is what became a typical mosque interior for Ahmedabad at the time. So, first mosque that gets done is the Ahmad Shah's tomb, which was done later on after the Muhammad Shah's, the first son. I have not yet come to Fat Khan of Muhammad Begra. The first tomb is made, and it's very interesting because the tomb architecture does not have to follow the rules of a mosque. So they didn't have to follow any of those canons which were already listed. It could also make architecture much more interesting. And also, this was a time when something called Sufism, like instead of going to a god, to a mosque, going to a tomb became as important. The tomb worship became more important rather than worship to the god. And these tombs were made up of several people, either a saint who would know much more about Quran, or somebody who is a hakim who could just cure you with your blood pressure, or somebody who knew much more about the politics and things like that. Like we know that those who also gave prophecies, we have one of the finest example in Fateh Musiqi, where Salim Chishti's tomb is like a jewel. Also is like a Sufi saint, that people went to those tombs to pray, to worship, and they believe that is more important. And this is now very true, because at the moment I think there are more people go to Ajmer Sharif than to any of the mosques together in the country, because that's what they believe in. So the tomb worship also started, but at the same time, the tombs for kings also takes place. So this is Ahmad Shah's tomb, and then this is how it looks. And the tomb for the queen is also quite interesting. For the king, tomb for the king is very simple to the center, because it's only one king. But the tomb for queens, there are many queens, so it's a huge courtyard, several tombs which are there. And our guess is that this was probably covered with some kind of textile or something else, but not permanent structure of a canopy which was there in stone, or dome which was there for the king's tomb. This was a time that the first king, I'm talking about Ahmad Shah and then the Muhammad Shah, was the time of Sarkhet actually started. Sarkhet already was there, but probably not so prominently designed or not prominently worked out, but Sarkhet starts construction then. And one of the most important is, we know this tomb and palace of Muhammad Shah, which is there, one who the second king, the mosque, and a huge lake which was there, which we all now have talked about enough. So I'm going to go a little faster with this. And that's the map of the mosque, the main tomb of Ahmad Shah, which is sorry, the tomb of Ahmad Khattu. And if those who are ladies are not allowed inside, but those who are gents must go inside and see that all around the tomb there is a wooden structure, and it has got one of the finest mother of the pearl you can see in the world. Mother of the pearl is the inlay of pearls in the wood, which is so finely done that if you put your hand, you can't even see the difference between wood and the pearls. So those who are ladies are not allowed to go in, but those who are gents must go in. And with the ladies, maybe sometimes with not many people around, just go find a day and just bribe yourself a little bit. You can go and see one of the finest mother of pearl inside this one. So Ahmad Khattu was very important, prominent Sufi which was there, and this was created in order to give back, because he was one of the person who actually had or kind of gave his blessings to Ahmad Shah to start Ahmedabad. Then there are other later mosques with tombs and other things. This is a very early photograph of water there. And then again, this was during the time when the water wasn't there. And again, it is water there now. I'm not going to talk about this because we've talked enough about this project. And the mosque is, as I showed you, was very simple colonnade, trabeated construction, domes on the top, as I showed you, partiated. But the light is not coming out of it because it does not have that kind of clear story features which was there already in the Jama Masjid, which I showed you. That's the color of the courtyard and the main prayer hall. The back side. So the one that I showed you, the earliest mosque in Dholka, the back side of the wall was quite made from parts, separate modules. Now they started getting even better quality of stone, better construction, and they didn't have to worry all the time from the temple spoiling this, or cut from the temples and put it together. So you can see, but the decoration is predominantly very Hindu. And the jalis, as they say, are very important features of Sarkhej. This is inside the Muhammad Begra's tomb, and the jali, or how it creates a quality of light inside. And this is the tomb of Ahmad Khattu, which we think was one of the most important Sufi saints who actually inspired Ahmad Shah to found the city here. And this pavilion also there, where a lot of music used to take place, even earlier too. So the first king was Ahmad Shah, I said, second king was Ahmad Shah, the third king is Qutbuddin Ahmad Shah, whose wife he sent to get his stepbrother back. He is also short-lived. He also didn't live for many years, only 9 years, 7, 8 years that he ruled, and he also died suddenly. He came on the throne at the age of 20 and around 29 and died. So he also continued the tradition of making architecture just the way his father had done, or his grandfather had done. One of the mosques in Daryapur called Qutbuddin Ahmad Shah's Mosque. But what you can see is very interesting. Two minarets which were there. We can think that about this must have been either something in wood or probably none existing at all. But the idea of making a facade higher to get the lighting was already there with Jama Masjid and its inclusions. So another one is Bibika Masjid in Raipur. You can see it's quite odd. Little minarets coming there, turrets like this is painted very hideously. But little minarets kind of for no reason, it's quite naive or kind of like a cut paste. But you can see a feature of Zarokha started coming in. The Zarokha, which was already part of the wooden architecture with lots of Hindu poor houses which you have there now, were already becoming part of the architecture around 1450s. And that was also the time that they started creating tents and other infrastructure which is around. And this was Kakare Lake, which we know, all of us. This is a very early photograph. And then he dies suddenly, and this is one of the finest period of Gujarat architecture, finest period for Ahmedabad, and the reign of Muhammad Begra, or the reign of Fat Khan, was just at the came on the throne at very early age. And he made one of the finest buildings for around 52 years. Now we also know that such a young king can't make such extraordinary buildings, can't make fabulous buildings like the ones that I'm going to show you. There has to be a wazir, there has to be bureaucrats who probably supervise all the buildings. And there must be those kind of support systems that we kind of say like the bureaucrats, that they help him to create an image of Ahmedabad architecture. Not only in terms of architecture, an image or a style, but also help to create several types of buildings. And I'm going to show you quickly some of those buildings. So there's a whole thing that he was one of the highest peaks of architecture that happens in Gujarat and in Ahmedabad. He's one of the longest of all, 54 years he ruled. That's quite a lot. 20 years of Modi, you can see what has happened in Ahmedabad. So Gujarat, 54 years of one person is quite Modi. A lot of people are pulling this age too. But 54 years is quite a lot. And there are lots of, he is considered kind of Siddharth of times of Muslim, or that we call it in Hindu architecture. And he also created lots of gardens and other things, and I'll show you some stepwells too. He was also, there's something that also happened during his time, that the relations with the neighbors became better. And that is very important because you imagine our maximum money must be going of the entire Indian budget in the defense. Imagine if there is no fear from Pakistan or China, so much of money can be saved. It's like Switzerland probably does not have to spend a lot of money on the defense because they don't have to worry about people around. Or something like America is so away that the First World War took place also in Europe, second also in Europe, and maybe third it happens, it's quite far. So you understand the problem is the safety that they can think. Whereas here, he started creating good relations with an area called Khandesh, which worked very well, which is on the other side, between Tapti and Narmada, this area called Khandesh that he created good relations. And then a lot of people came from Portugal, from other parts of Egypt, and other revenues also came to Gujarat at that time. So he not only did in terms of architecture, but in terms of even commerce, went further too. So one of the first mosques, he started making not only the old part of this old city or the fortification of the city, but made also suburbs around. One of the first suburbs that he made, we call it Usmanpura. Usman, which was Sayyid Usman's mosque that he finds, and he makes. These are the Sufis which were already there at the time around 16th century. So he makes Sayyid Usman's mosque, which is there already now. You can just walk, there's a park all around, but you can go walk around and see. And the Zaruk Khasef became part of the features, and also the tomb of the Sayyid Usman, who was one of the same, was there, and this was created at the same time by Mohammed Baker. And that's the tomb. Also another interesting thing that happens is, we call it this Muhammadan order, that it's the capital of this column is the base of this column. So this became one order of a Muhammadan style in 15th century. This is inside the tomb. And the ceilings. Now this ceiling happens in a mosque and a tomb of Muhammad Usman in Usmanpura, but I think it's quite Hindu in any way. Now one of the things that people believe that who did all this mosque and tombs and other buildings at that time? Of course, it's like the way we are now. There's suppose L&T is doing the contractor, or Shapuji Palaji is doing the contractor, or somebody XYZ other contractors. They would work irrespective of whoever you are. They would work for BJP, they would work for Congress. As long as the money comes. I'm sure this also was the thing called the inculcation of work environment, that there were some people who kept on making temples, but they also made the mosque. Only a few things changed, but they only knew how many things to do, and they did those things either it was irrespective of temple or irrespective of the mosque. So we can see lots of styles of Hindu architecture, Hindu iconography comes into this. The mosques which were getting built around 15th century, 16th century. So another one, Dastur Khan, this is the one on the way to Astoria before Rani Sikri Mosque, and it's created on a higher plane there. Now one of the things that we while doing this lots of measure drawing around 1987, 88, 89, we were just walking around and it was quite a long time we were measuring, and we realized that any time when the flood takes place, huge, torrential rain that happens in Ahmedabad, very rarely you see the old city getting flooded. Because the old city probably was found such a way, because it's not straight lines, it's found on the contours which are already created, so that the roads would become, water will go ultimately to the river. This is how some of the mosques were done on a higher place, because they would not get flooded ever. So both these mosques which are there, one is the Dastur Khan and one is Rani Sipri, which is on a Rani Sabrai, is on a higher place. We think this was one of the reasons. And the Jali work, as I showed you in circuit, became very prominent at the time. The mosque interior became much more finer, much more sleeker, much more simpler compared to earlier ones, because earlier ones were cut pasted from the columns which were already there from the temple's columns. So this was the map of Ahmedabad, Gujarat, and Ahmedabad is there. The area which is above Narmada is called Malwa. Area between Narmada and Tapti is called Khandesh, a very, very prominent region at the time of 15th and 16th century. And we have the records that Akbar actually traveled to these areas many times, Khandesh, and also Malwa, of course. One of the main center of Malwa is Mandu, and Mandu that time around, at the same time created the tomb which was done in marble, which actually inspired, which you know exactly, inspired Taj Mahal. So the architecturally, both these areas were quite good. But this is my story and my imagination, because I always try to think, what was the relation? Why they were always fighting? I think if you go around this region, it's quite dry, even today. Above this is Chambal, which is nothing grows, and the Dakus were there even till 20 years ago. So I have this thing that probably every morning the Malwa and Khandesh king got up, and agenda was what? Agenda was how to loot Gujarat. Okay, when do we loot Gujarat? When do we go to Gujarat and loot? Now, I'm not interested in money looting, that's fine. But this exchange the architecture too. That what style of architecture we saw that we can borrow, or what kind of architecture we can give back. But more of taking back. So my guess is that a lot of things the relations were not very good throughout for so many years, around 100, 120 years. By the time it's Muhammad Bega who comes in, his wazirs, some of his people, made truce with both the kings, both Malwa and Khandesh kings, that made them even grow further and better. So, as I told you, there are lots of other regions. One of them is Shaibar, which is outside the Gujarat, outside the old part of Ahmedabad. They made Mia Khan Chishti stone, and you can see those minarets which were there earlier, just till here stopped, went all the way up here. But still quite crude, not so elegant in terms of aesthetics or in terms of the way it should look. But they still try to make a clear story, which is to get the lighting and make minarets as part of the front. And this is, I want to show, because I'll come a little later, that they were also trying to make their own symbol. Like every Bhajap has one symbol, Congress has a symbol called hand. Like that, the Gujarat kings also were trying to make their own identity of like an emblem, like a symbol of their own kingdom. And I'll come to that, but this is the kind of things we're getting done. But you can see here that there is a lotus, a chain, and a pot. Now all these three are probably absolutely Hindu motifs that you know. And where are they put? They are put inside the mihrab, the most holiest of the holy, the most auspicious space in the mosque. So what all the Muslims are praying to? The three most predominant or dominant Hindu motifs: a lotus, a chain, and a pot. And the pot also, if I don't know detailed photograph, but with the people live on the side. So if you must have seen when people get married, there's a pot and there is people put on the side. So these are the motifs that were there putting inside the mihrabs of Muslim mosque at the time. And if you look at it, there is a kalash on the top, and the same thing is put in here too. And this decoration which we see is immediately, we call it imitation of arts, learned from wooden architecture, or wooden architecture learned from this, whichever way we put it. So you can see now they have started getting much more finer, because I just want to quickly show you the kind of this minarets which are here, not so, still crude, becomes even much interesting. I mean, I don't have to tell, you don't have to become an architect to kind of have an aesthetic sense, but they look much better, they look much more elegant. Now the few portions are fallen down, but the architecture became much more interesting and aesthetically pleasing. Also, the stone came from one body. Earlier, the stones came from different parts of the temple, different parts of the places, so it was kind of quite mishmash. Here, it was all one. And inside, this is how the light came in. The clear story light, the dome was taken up with the light coming from all the sides. I know there are not many architects, but clear story is the one that's the area between the top, the ceiling, and above the eye, above the passage, and below the ceiling. So it's kind of area between the two is we call it clear story, where the light comes in from the top. It's like kind of like skylight kind of. And the Jali work. Now the Jali work that I showed you of the Ahmad Shah mosque, the first mosque from 1414, had all crude cut pasted things. Now suddenly they get much better, more elaborated, more elegant. But look at this. This is a kind of symbolic or very way a temple shikhar or temple superstructure is put in the top of a niche in a Chutkuki's mosque window. Now, we also know that any client, when I'm an architect, I'm practicing architect, and every time I go to an architect, a client, they call us. The first question, I'm sure they ask you and they ask me, and Masala Sahib also will agree, when can I have my building? I said, yes. You just met me today, I have to make drawings, and it takes time. You know? There's a joke of a friend of mine who works for a builder. Builder comes and says, when can we have it? We are in very hurry. He said, yeah, I've heard it. He said, when can you do the building? We are in hurry. He said, okay, I've heard about it. The third time he says, when can you have the building, sir? We are in hurry. The first meeting, this friend of mine got up. He said, okay, let's go to site. He said, why? He said, let's start digging. He said, how can you dig without drawings? He said, yes, that's what takes time. Making drawings takes time. Every client is in hurry of making a building. And so was this king's too. And when the money is more, his greed is even more. Because I have money, I want to believe tomorrow morning. This is the problem. It's all the clients then, and I'm sure even now. I'm sure now and even then. So they also have the same problem to make buildings faster. So what do? They invent something called bricks. This is the first building ever built in entire Western India in bricks. And this is Azam Muazzam, one of the another Sufis tomb, which is there on the way to Vasna, which you can see. It's a very beautiful dome, which is not properly destroyed, quite a lot, but very interesting filigree of the brickwork put on, and the marbles which are there, and little turrets they are there. Now brick became a very predominant material to use because temples are already over to break, so no more temples left. To get the stone from the quarry would take a lot of time because they will come probably on a horse cart or on a bullock cart. Will take a lot of time to come, so suddenly it's creating problem to make the buildings faster. So one of the way is to do bricks, and they realize that Gujarat and Ahmedabad all around the soil is very good. They made one fine. Even today, bricks are done very good. When IIM was built, Louis Khan realized that the brick quality is excellent. That's one of his first buildings where he makes in bricks so well. Otherwise, he would have actually imported travertine from Italy. That he said, I got a travertine facade, so marble facade. But the brick was quite good then, and they started using bricks as a construction material. This was the first building of Western India, entire Western India, done in brick as a material. That's how it looks. Still crude, not so kind of finesse in terms of decoration, in terms of construction. But the second mosque, the second tomb, which is Darya Khan's tomb, which is just near the police commissioner Kacheri, which is quite interesting. It's a huge dome, it's one of the biggest dome of brick that time. But they had to also learn how to make architecture with this another material. They knew how to do it with stone. And already because they've been doing it, I showed you very early style of around 11th century Modera, and later on, subsequently, they knew how to make buildings quickly with stone. But how to make it in brick was not so easy. They had to still learn and experiment. So one of the things that they do is something called squid, which I'll come with later. That's how it looks. and the squinch. So to make a dome, when you make trabeated, which is column and beam, it's one. When you make arcuated, it's kind of, you make a dome which is 4 sides, you make 8 sides, then 16 sides, 32 sides, and ultimately starts the dome. Here, they started making a brick squinch, which kind of made from 4 sides to 8 sides to 16 sides, and ultimately made the dome in brick as a material. That's how it looks. You can see this is the one supports and this one supports at the top. But look at this 45-degree bricks which are put in here. Quite interesting. So an architect which was probably was there was sensitive. He was trying to show the support here and support there. It was also a time that they created several other campuses. We know that Française was one of the earliest campuses that we have, which had a tomb, a mosque, a madrasa, palaces, water, everything, gardens, everything put together. And there are lots of scholars who say that Française was probably one of the building, one of the campus, one of the project which influenced Fatehpur Sikri too. Anyway, we don't know about that much, but the campuses got created. One of them was Qutb Alam, the Shah Alam, as you call it, in Vatwa, where there is mosque and tomb and other buildings put together, where things were created where there are tombs inside. So this is what, there are lots of tombs and the structure was created all around. I'm going to go a little faster and come to one of the more interesting buildings. And the Jali again. This is Shah Alam in Vatwa. And that's how it is. So lots of tombs are there all around, and that's why we went there. It's still one of the very important pilgrimage center for Muslims of the city. That's the mosque. And you look at the minarets. They already had learned how to do it better, taller, and more interesting. And the dome, which was done in stone. And the flat ceilings. And the Jali work. So they are already, by the time around 150 years, they had learned how to make buildings better, quicker, and also more elegant. Then they also started, this was also the time when mosque and tomb became part of together. Earlier the mosques were separate, tombs were separate. Suddenly, by the time of Ahmedabad, even earlier too, that the mosque and tomb became as one campus. Like what happened in Française, the tomb and mosque were together. They also started making tomb and mosque together. This is the Rani Bai Hari, the Dada Hari Bao, which is just near Asarma, where this mosque and tomb is created. But look at the mosque. It's just one bay. So it's just very narrow but longer. And the tomb, which is there in the center, and that's the inside section, and the decoration, which is now this. If you go around the old part of the city, there are lots of wooden blocks that you can buy, which are very similar to this patterns too. So they also are, as we call it, anthropology, that you learn from what you see, or imitation of arts, and this is how it happens. That's the elevation of the tomb. That's how it looks. And the decoration became more and more prominent. The Zarokhas, sometimes Zarokhas became as part of the feature, and they created this this mosque, which is in Mirzapur, which is there. And you can see that this is fallen off, but the Zarokhas became more prominent at the front facade. And that's the tomb next to the mosque. And this nishit, which I'll come in later further, that there's a pot and things like that, is part of the element. And look at the top of Zarokha, which is predominantly Hindu motifs. There. After the death of Muhammad Begra, I quickly want to show you one or two very important buildings by the later Sultans. One of them is Rani Sabrai or the Rani Sikri. This is, as told by lots of historians, this is the gem of the building. Those who have not seen, they must go and see. It's one of the finest structures that you have in the entire Western India. so well carved, the stone, as if it's kind of just turning from plaster of Paris. Very, very finesse. And this is in Astoria. There's a tomb. I was a mosque and a tomb in the front. Right? Earlier it was, tomb was a little away in front, not in front of the mosque. But here the tomb is there and the mosque in the front. But instead of single bay, it's two bays here. That's how it looks. And everything is decorated. If you go around and see, the marbles here are one of the finest marbles I've seen. This is the top one. What you see here are one of the finest one done on the top of the mosque, not on the tomb of the mosque. And inside, the mihrab, which is done, and the tomb. So they again made a clear story high, but only taken light from one of the places, not all around. The jali work, which is all around. And then the tomb became more important than the mosque. The tomb is in the center and mosque is all around. So this is something that is quite interesting. I really don't understand. The person must have said that this is in Istanbul, that put my tomb in the center. Earlier the tomb was on the side, as I showed you. Tomb is in the side, the mosque is in the front. Now they just say we change it and put a tomb in the center and the mosque is all around. So this is also the beginning around 15th century. We know that it's the beginning of Sufism, that they started praying more to the tomb worship rather than mosque worship. That's how it happens. And this is a very late mosque. But suddenly we start seeing some more temple spoilages. Till date they've been having, from temple they started making mosques, then they got their own stones, then they also shifted to making into brick. Suddenly in the later mosque, which is there, this is in Fateh Mosque, which is in Daryapur, there are some spoilage of the temple too. We don't know the story how it happened. And the little pavilion in the side, this is like a more Hindu pavilion than a Muslim pavilion in a mosque, compound. But you can see that absolutely Hindu columns from some column mandapa has been put in together. Inside also the same. And this is the mosque that I like very much. It's kind of for people who are modern architects. This is the finesse of modern architecture. Very little decoration and a clear story height with a plain facades and cut out in the center. And the decoration inside for the squinch, the dome structure and the squinch below is also decorated as part of the feature. And even the minar. And this is one of my favorite structures. I always take students from architecture school once in a semester. This is in Ahmedabad, a village called Sojoli. It's on the river bank of Sabarmati. It's called Sayyid Muhammad Bukhari's tomb. It is a perfect Gujarat style architecture, not Muslim, not Hindu, and put together. That's how it looks. I do 3 hours stop at this site, so I'm not going to do, because if I start, I'll not stop. But this is how it looks. Very beautiful. And it's located right on the bank of the river. That's inside. The columns, look at the columns, really thick columns. And the bays are very interesting. I kind of talk to students, and these bays they are not all equal bays. 1, 2, and 3, and 4. They all have 4 different sizes of the bay. And I asked why. There were reasons to do why. Why would you not put the same bay? This is A, this is B, this is C, and this is D. They are all not same. And they are all just done for a reason which is so easily seen when you see the structure, when you go to the site, you realize it. Anyway. So this is the columns that they are done. The column sizes are same, and the decoration. Now this is what you can see, the emblem of Gujarat, the lotus, a chain, and a pot is part of the features in the sides of the column too. And that's the river bank on the this is the bastion, and that's the building you can see. And we know that there were nice style work which was pasted on top of the dome, or the bottom of the dome. And of course, I cannot stop talking about Sidi Sir Mosque. In front of Mr. Mangaldas' finest cuisine restaurant is the jali work there too. And the jalis that is very interesting. This is the one in the center, probably not there. But the one which I like very much is the tree of life and the palm and the parasite. This is the one that I like very much. The palm and the parasite. These are the stories that also you can see in the Quran when they talk about the reasons of making this. And this is actually cities where actually they were people who came from Africa. They became very important in the reign of later sultans. And one of the cities called Said decided to make a tomb, make a mosque of himself. Instead of making it very elaborate, big, because that he can't do, because he's working under the king. He decides, or he probably thought, this is my thinking, that he decided, why not I just make it beautiful in terms of jali rather than a huge structure. This is my interpretation. Inside is very simple, nothing great about it. It's just the jali that makes it so interesting. And the jali is done such a way that any time you pass, you go and see it. And so I just want to show you from the smallest mosque, this is 3 bays, 5 bays, 7 bays, 9, it goes more, and here from 1 base to 2 bays, 3 bays, to 4 bays, and that's the Jama Masjid. And that's the mosque that I showed you, Hebat Khan, the only one with the little turrets on the side. All the mosques are very clean structure. And as I said quickly, this was a time, at Muhammad Baker's time, they also started making lots of stepwells. And this one stepwell, which is a Ralaj, was made at exactly the same time as done with Dada Haribab, which is also there at the same time. Both the stepwells, one was done by a Muslim queen and one was done by a Hindu queen. So there can be stories too. These are my interpretation, but we are not talking about it now. Both the stepwells were done at the same time on one side of the Ahmedabad, another side of Ahmedabad. One was by Muslim queen, another has to be by Hindu queen, and those who are here would certainly understand the maximum rivalry between two ladies. And we always go to any function, every lady wants to see what other one is wearing, rather than what she is wearing, or what she has already on the body, but what others have. So this is, I'm sure there must have been quite a rivalry. Who makes it better? So that's the jali work that we talk about. And I just want to end with 3 slides. This is the drawing that I got, a drawing of done of 1809 of Ahmedabad. This is from British Library in London. And this is, Ahmedabad was in 1809. You can see everything around outside the fort wall was just fields. And just few things all around. Few things here, and few things here, Sayyid Usman there. But everything was trees all around. This is Ahmedabad of 1809 from British Library. British India Office Library. This is again from India Office Library of 1970. And if you look at it, Kankaria, all around Kankaria were still fields. Now you have fields, but of concrete. That's all the differences. So I asked him, when I was working at India Office Library, this was in 1980s, I said, how come you have all these things? He said, it's very simple, Mr. Shah. He said, when India and Pakistan, there was a partition, all the documents, India said, we keep it. Pakistan said, we keep it. Because you can't divide the book.